Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. Today we got a little bit of a final update, I would say, on the Apex Legends hacking situation. Now, this is probably the last time I'm going to really talk about this unless something massive comes out, a big bombshell. But to give you an idea, a couple days ago, the ALGS happened, which is the Apex Legends Global Series. And in the middle of the series, two actual players ended up getting hacks basically gifted to them in the middle of the play. And to understand, anytime a esports player has a aimbot, a wall hack show up, that's the death of their career. Now, thankfully, their career didn't end because the hacker known as Destroyer 2009 actually ended up coming into the lobby and basically signing their hack alongside this. And they basically told everyone, hey, listen, we're going to give you hacks. And they signed themselves along. So people knew that it wasn't these two players actually hacking. They were hacked in the middle of a global series. Now, usually I think global series happen, kind of in a private server setting, maybe a private build, maybe in person. But to do it over the internet with the, I guess, security that EA had is a bit questionable. But hey, the whole thing happened and now people are kind of in a little bit of a pandemonium about it. Is Apex Legends safe to play? Is my computer safe? Now, in this situation, there's been a lot of misinformation that's been floating around. One of the pieces of information I saw when I watched Charlie's video actually earlier was one person actually tweeting out, because of the knowledge I have in programming, Destroyer 2009 is using the server's own tools to make its magic happen. He's using webhooks, which is a feature that makes it possible to send data in real time between two different systems or applications. So of course, like the internet, I guess people jumped in and believed this, even though maybe the definition of webhooks works out, but that wouldn't apply in a situation like this. There are two people that I want to shout out in this situation that have done an absolutely good job at demystifying the misinformation on this situation as well. These two include Pirate Software, who has recently blown up. He is somebody with an amazing resume. Okay, he's worked for Blizzard Entertainment, Amazon, and of course the US Department of Energy. So this guy knows what he's talking about, and he was able to demystify and actually interview the two affected players in this situation. So in his interview, they actually went over a few steps, and one of the things that kind of came up in one of the clips that I'd seen was the topic of reinstalling Windows and whatnot.
Jen Burn just stated in my chat that he did a full reinstall of Windows before the tournament started.
Full reinstall of Windows before the tournament started?
Yeah.
And if malware could persist through it. So I want to take a side note and just tell people that persistence is an art, okay? One way that I'll tell you is I've seen malware persist through OneDrive. Now, I want to just bring up for the record that operating system reinstalls, like even if you reinstall Windows, it's not as if it's a catch-all bullet. There are, obviously attacks like Moonbounce, for instance, malwares, which, can go through the computer's UEFI firmware, and Kaspersky has a great write-up where they talk about this situation. So if you want to read up on how operating system reinstalls are not the catch-all bullet, this is just one other vector. I wanted to bring this up because when I heard this part in the interview, when there were Windows reinstallations, this piqued my interest, and obviously the discussion of persistence, I also wanted to, bring up how certain artistic ways can be handled in making sure people stay hacked. That said, kind of rambling on here, let's go forward into the Apex situation. But the other researcher that I want to bring up into this was John Hammond, who made a video talking about this as well. And again, these are both cybersecurity researchers that have credits in the game. They know what they're talking about. Now, of course, when you go into these situations, I wanted to delve a little bit deeper and see where the issue actually lies. Now, one of the things I touched upon in the previous video was you never really know, okay? At the end of the day, it could be a problem with the Apex Legends game. It could be a problem with the anti-cheat. It could even be a problem with something that these two may have downloaded onto their system. There are just so many vectors, and without actually having access to their systems, a memory dump, or something of that nature, without actually having real evidence to peek into, all anybody can do, regardless of their credentials or their history or their understanding of this topic, it can all just lead to pure speculation. So there have been some announcements since then, and one of the announcements was actually hilarious. A TechCrunch that actually got in touch with Destroyer 2009 said that they did it just for fun, and the goal was to force the Apex Legends developers to fix the vulnerability he exploited. So when they actually wanted to talk about how this had happened, Destroyer 2009 will not discuss this vulnerability or even report it to Apex Legends, because there is no bug bounty program that financially rewards hackers and researchers for reporting any security flaw, which is something I didn't even know existed until today. So for those of you who don't know what a bug bounty is, for instance, Riot will provide up to $100,000 for any reports regarding the Vanguard kernel driver, right? So for anybody that doesn't know, Valorant uses the Vanguard anti-cheat, which runs on your system. Like, it's a kernel level driver. And if there's any issues and you find them, you're incentivized to report it to Riot. So they'll pay you, for basically keeping their software safe, right? I didn't even know that EA was cheap enough to not offer a bug bounty program for one of their biggest online games out there. But I guess that's why we're sitting here. So obviously there have been some announcements. For instance, Apex Legends comes in. The actual account finally says, on Sunday, a few professional Apex Legends players' accounts were hacked during an ALGS event. Games and player security are our highest priority, which is why we paused the competition to address the issue immediately. Our teams have deployed the first of a layered series of updates to protect the Apex Legends player community and create a secure experience for everyone. So here they've actually said that, hey, there have been a layered series of updates. So when I read this, I thought to myself, okay, it's probably something directly with Apex Legends, right? So when you go to Epic Games, even Epic sits over here and says, we've investigated all the reports of a potential RCE. Now, one of the mistakes I made in my previous video was I said remote code exploitation instead of remote code execution. Remote code exploitation is wrong. Me and XQC have one thing in common. We barely get sleep. But yes, it is remote code execution. So one mistake I had. But anyways, EOS says, Apex Legends, we have confirmed to be unrelated to Easy Anti-Cheat. We are confident there is no vulnerability within EAC being exploited. So I feel like with that said, I can kind of really believe what, Easy Anti-Cheat is saying, just because in my opinion, and again, when looking into a situation like this, all you really can do is speculate. If Easy Anti-Cheat is actually compromised, I could imagine this kind of attack would be occurring in other games powered by Easy Anti-Cheat, right? Like, you would start to see it in other games that also use this similar driver. The other reality of it is, if this was an Easy Anti-Cheat situation, I highly doubt a person like Destroyer 2009 or anybody would be willing to expose such an amazing golden goose level of an exploit, all just to make 2 days of internet content, okay? 2 days of an internet news cycle. These are two things that I keep running into my head ever since I talked about the situation. If you had something this exploitable, because remember, Easy Anti-Cheat is not just Apex Legends, it's multiple other games out there. It's Fortnite, it's tons of other multiplayer shooters with tons of millions of players having access, right, to their systems. I don't think that they would just announce this publicly without actually exploiting it, right? If this was an Easy Anti-Cheat situation. And I thank God, hopefully it's not an Easy Anti-Cheat situation, and it doesn't look like it either, because if it was an Easy Anti-Cheat situation, a lot of computers would be at risk. And again, that's one of the reasons why I said at the time, if this game has an issue, Apex probably is best to not run it for a couple days. Now, of course, Connor Ford Hideouts came out, who, if you don't know who he is Apex's security worker. So he says, we are working, the team on this are some of the most talented I've ever had the pleasure of working with. All I can say is, the care and love shown from parties involved make me thankful for the co-workers and developers on this game. So I've seen a few people kind of rag on these individuals saying, what are you guys actually doing if you got a hack running? I think it's actually disgusting to rip on the actual programmers and the developers for the video game and the anti-cheat, okay? First off, development of any software, especially a video game, is incredibly convoluted, right? It's complicated. Sometimes what you make can break another thing, okay? There are a lot of exploits just waiting to happen, right? Anything can happen. When shit hits the fan, it's easy to blame the programmers and ask them to be fired and somebody else brought in. But in reality, when shit hits the fan, it could have been anything. I wouldn't even put it to the fault of any individual person. All you really can do in a situation like this is kind of support the actual development team and hope that they can isolate, figure out the problem, and hopefully patch it in due time. Remember, it's not as simple as, going to the office, clicking a few buttons, finding out where the exploit is, clicking another few buttons, and patching. Now again, like I said earlier, I wish we had more information in regards to the two people who had actual malware show up on their system, just because I would like to see what they were doing on their computer before the game. Had they clicked on any phishing link? Had they launched any piece of software? Were they individually compromised? And it wasn't just the game. It's also hard for me to trust the hacker as well, too. There's a lot of moving parts in the situation, but I think really what kind of clears up for me is, at the end of the day, there has been a response, and it seems primarily towards the side of the Apex Legends game. Now again, to constantly just... Now obviously, to go back to that Pirate Software interview with the actual affected, I would say that given what he had seen, there is, at least in my opinion, a reasonable expectation that maybe there was some actual remote access, some direct compromisation, maybe of these two individuals. First off, to basically say something, anybody that does these kind of high profile hacks, there isn't necessarily even a contingent requirement that there is rationale. One thing that hits me is if EAC was actually attacked or the actual anti-cheat was compromised, the amount of computers and the amount of systems that would be at risk would be pretty astronomical if there was a vulnerability in the actual anti-cheat, because tons of other games use easy anti-cheat. That was where I think a big level of fear came out. The fear-mongering was actually centered around there. And had this existed, I don't think a high-profile hacker or any hacker would have given up the sauce that easily and had caused, what would be an amazing 0-day, would be an amazing entry point into millions of computers up just as easily as that. Basically give up their cards in a ALGS finale like this. If it was, however, related to just the game itself, I still don't think giving up, the cards would be that logical. It could just be that Destroyer 2009 in some white hat way just wanted to make a big hoopla and cause Apex Legends to reassess their security for their specific game. However, if this is just, the case of two individuals being compromised, then the act of playing Apex Legends is far safer than what we thought, 48, 72 hours ago. I will say, however, when it comes to situations like this, the amount of awareness that is raised by people, or the amount of eyeballs that are opened in regards to computer safety, is actually quite welcoming to see. I think for people who, are questioning, is it safe to play something, should probably question any software that connects to the internet and has you interacting with other end users. This could have been something that may have happened in something like Rainbow Six Siege. It could have happened with other anti-cheats that are at that root kernel level, if that is the actual situation. But at the end of the day, for people who want to be completely safe from these situations, I've always talked about sandboxing your games or virtualizing your, Windows installations so you can add that extra layer of security. But it's one of the reasons why at least and again, this goes for people who can afford it, if you can buy a separate computer, it doesn't have to be a crazy good gaming computer. Most of these esports tier games don't really have crazy system requirements. Buy a separate Windows PC just so you can have that separation of software, so you can have your core system where you do all of your important stuff like banking, personal information, things like YouTubing even, or streaming. You have your own dedicated computer for that, separate from a video game that opens up a potential attack vector, right? That is probably the best advice to give. And if you are truly paranoid, then yeah, waiting, a week or two or until a significant patch is released to play this video game, it can be a thing. One of the other ways I always tend to play games like this is usually on PlayStation or Xbox. I find that typically on a console, the ability to get hacked is not something that is going to be happening. And if it does, then boy, I look forward to running unsigned code on a console anyway, so let me figure out how to do that right there and then. That said, this is pretty much the end of the Apex Legends saga. It's crazy how one little cybersecurity slip-up has made, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people, the whole community, pretty much wake up and kind of understand and learn a few things, I would say. you know, in all, I just hope this is never an issue that goes into the easy anti-cheat situation where potentially millions are affected. I really do hope that this gets resolved as quick as I can, and I do wish the best for the programmers and security officers at Apex Legends, EA, Respawn Entertainment to basically have this resolved and the rest of the player base as safe as they can. That being said, this is me, Mutahar, and I'm out.